Happy birthday, America. It's been 250 years, and President Trump has a big gift for you. It's a giant arch with what is very definitely not a Nazi iron eagle on it. It's a refurbished reflecting pool that immediately filled up with algae thanks to saboteurs who hate America. He gave us a UFC fight on the White House lawn that just so happened to coincide with his own 80th birthday. He slapped his name on the Kennedy Center, although a mean judge made him take it back. He filled the skies of D.C. with hours and hours of overflights, followed by a gonzo display of fireworks that filled the air with acrid smoke for 24 hours, and he gave us the Great American State Fair on the National Mall, which is just like every state fair you went to in your own hometown, minus all the rides and games and crazy fried food and people. But that just made it easier for the true patriots who showed up to get right up close and enjoy all the AI-generated attractions. Okay, to be fair, it does have one Ferris wheel, which was even working most of the time, and it was pretty packed on July 4th itself. Luckily, D.C. was a balmy 102 degrees for the first week of festivities, and then it rained. But you know what they say, it's not the heat, it's the humidity that makes an outdoor event amazing. But this is a law channel, so we're not here to just crack jokes about the latest administration debacle, although we're definitely not above it. For the last year, Trump's allies inside and outside of government have been quietly building this grifting machine to turn a birthday party for America into a celebration of the president himself. It involved a shadow company buried inside a national park charity, selling private access to the president for millions of dollars, lying to donors about where their money was going, allegedly, and paying Trump's own political operatives to run the whole thing. They tried to take over America's official 250th birthday commission first, and when that didn't work, they looted it and built their own. They called it Freedom250, and it may be the most expensive vanity project and potential federal crime in American history. In normal times, America's 250th birthday would be a nonpartisan event that people of all political orientations could enjoy together, and that was originally the plan. In 2016, Congress passed the United States Semi-Quincentennial Commission Act, establishing an organization called America 250 to plan festivities for July 4th, 2026. The law passed by unanimous consent in the Senate and was widely supported by both parties. But Trump always planned to hijack this project. In May of 2023, candidate Trump released a campaign video pledging to convene his own task force called Salute to America 250 to run a full year of birthday events culminating in a giant festival at the Iowa State Fairgrounds. Never mind that the actual congressionally chartered commission had already been planning for 7 years. Just a week into his second term, Trump signed an executive order establishing Task Force 250 inside the Department of Defense with himself as the chair and Vice President Vance as vice chair. Then he set about planning 2 very elaborate birthday parties, not for the country, but for himself. On June 14, 2025, which happened to be Trump's 79th birthday, he was treated to a giant military parade to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. Then 1 year later, he had a UFC fight staged on the South Lawn of the White House for his 80th birthday. But Trump was not content with throwing himself giant parties. He wants to leave his mark permanently on the city with a 250-foot arch near Arlington National Cemetery that will loom over the Lincoln Memorial, a White House ballroom where the East Wing once stood. He's painting the reflecting pool American flag blue, and he's going to turn the East Potomac Public Golf Course into a Trump-style private one, all of which is supposed to be a gift for the nation's 250th anniversary.
He goes, Jesse, you want to see the rendition of the big, beautiful ballroom? I said, sure, let me see it. He said, Jesse, it's a monument. I'm building a monument to myself because no one else will.
No, come on. Does that sound like the modest, self-effacing guy who's planning to plant 47 mature maple trees in Lafayette Square to mark the glorious occasion of his own presidency? Would the man who slapped his name on the side of the Kennedy Center build monuments to himself on the public dime? The problem, though, is that when you turn a birthday party for America into a birthday party for one guy, a guy who's pretty unpopular, not so many people show up.
Man, we've got thousands of people celebrating this birthday with us, Tommy.
And so the Great American State Fair on the National Mall was substantially less than it was cracked up to be. Here's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt talking about how cool it is to be alive during this historic time while accidentally documenting the fact that no one else was there. According to CNN, Trump's pissed that no one came to celebrate him, and White House officials who tweeted aerial photos showing acres of empty fields during his kickoff speech scrambled to delete their post. And So Trump did what he always does, which is insist on social media that the mall is packed with happy people and everybody loving it. With the obligatory swipe at Biden and Obama, of course. All of that is intensely embarrassing, but what happened behind the scenes was worse. We're living through a weird moment, and things feel shaky for all of us, especially students. So if your private student loans are in default or you're struggling with payments, the sponsor of this portion of the video, YRefi, is an excellent refinancing solution. What makes YRefi stand out to us is how truly student loan borrower friendly they are. Monthly payments are built around what you can actually afford. Rates are fixed from 1% to 5.99%, so you never have to guess what your payment will be each month, which is basically unheard of for private student loans. There's no minimum FICO score required, bad credit will never disqualify you, and they even offer a Skip 12 program if you ever need to skip payments for any reason. And if you have a parent or cosigner on your student loans, YRefi can help with that too through their cosigner release program. Plus, you always talk to a real human in the United States whenever you call. Refinancing with YRefi could save you thousands to tens of thousands of dollars over the course of your loan repayment and give you the invaluable peace of mind of fixed, low monthly payments. So click or scan to talk to YRefi today, or we will see you in court. Now remember, there was already a bipartisan congressionally chartered commission dedicated to planning the semi-quincentennial. It had been working for 8 years when Trump came back to the White House and set up Task Force 250. And at first, the two teams worked together. America 250 Chair Rosie Rios, a former Treasury official under Obama, understood that she was going to have to suck up to Trump to protect the project, and she did. After the 2024 election, she sent him a memo suggesting that he invite King Charles III to visit, echoing Queen Elizabeth's trip for the bicentennial in 1976. And Rios added a whole bunch of Trumpland heavy hitters to the America 250 team. Michael Shearer at The Atlantic reports that Rios brought in Chris LaCivita, Trump's former campaign manager, and Justin Caporale, whose company Event Strategies, Inc., or ESI, has planned a bunch of Trump events, including the March on D.C. on January 6, 2021. Meredith O'Rourke, a Trump campaign fundraiser, was hired to solicit donations for the project. Trump appointed Monica Crowley, the U.S. Chief of Protocol, to serve concurrently as America 250's principal media representative. And the White House installed its own executive director over the commission, Ariel Abergel, a 25-year-old former Fox News producer. Rios bent over backwards to stay in the president's good graces. When Trump wanted to stage that military parade for his own birthday, America 250 let him raise money for it through the commission's own nonprofit. More than $30 million got routed through America 250 for the parade and Trump's Iowa speech and his West Point commencement address and a Fort Bragg speech, all of which were sponsored by companies like Palantir, Amazon, Oracle, and Coinbase, which have business or regulatory issues before the Trump administration. But the relationship between the White House and America 250 curdled fast, according to a newly released report by Democrats on the House Committee on National Resources. TLDR, Trump wanted to use America 250 for increasingly partisan purposes, and when he got pushback, his allies, including LaCivita, O'Rourke, and Caporale, jumped ship and took all the money with them. Here's Trump telling a crowd at the Iowa State Fairgrounds during a speech that was paid for through America 250 that the Great America State Fair would actually take place on the National Mall.
But the Great American State Fair will bring America 250 programming to fairgrounds across the country, culminating in a giant patriotic festival next summer on the National Mall, featuring exhibits from all 50 states, and all 50 states are excited, and I was excited.
That move displaced the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, which has been held on the mall every summer since 1967 to honor contemporary living cultural traditions and celebrate those who practice and sustain them. Now it will be sustaining those traditions on the road, i.e. not in the nation's capital. But okay, if that was all Trump had said, it would have been fine. But the rest of the speech was incredibly partisan, and as the crowd waved America 250 signs, Trump urged Republicans to get out in the midterms, saying he hated Democrats because they hate America.
Not one Democrat voted for us, and they wouldn't vote only because they hate Trump. But I hate them too, you know that? So it's sort of, I really do, I hate them. I cannot stand them because I really believe they hate our country. You want to know the truth?
Shearer reports that Abergel pushed the commission to focus on televised events glorifying the president rather than programming by and for regular Americans. And in September, he used America 250's official Instagram account to post, "God bless Charlie Kirk," after Kirk's assassination. That was the end of Abergel at America 250, but it was not the end of the takeover attempt, just the end of trying to do it from inside the building. Now, this next part requires you to understand the way that the federal government solicits charitable donations. Because if you, as an individual, or more likely a corporation, want to subsidize a project for the benefit of the American people, you can't just write a check to the Treasury and put in the memo line, "for my special project." Congress has to stand up a nonprofit that can accept public funds that are then administered by an executive branch agency. And we've seen the Trump administration use that model to fund projects it can't get through Congress. Most famously, of course, is the White House ballroom. Trump knocked down the East Wing, and then he said he was building this giant party barn in its place with privately donated funds, or not actually. Now, the donor list for the ballroom includes a lot of big companies that also want things from the federal government. And the construction without congressional approval was later ruled illegal by 2 courts. But okay, that is the model, to solicit the money and get around Congress. And at first, the administration planned to use America 250's nonprofit to accept donations to support all of Trump's parties for himself. That's how they funded the America 250 parade on his birthday. And according to House Democrats, White House officials pressed the commission to fold Trump-aligned programming into its slate of events, including the National Day of Prayer, UFC fight, and Patriot Games, pressuring it to transform America 250's nonpartisan events into Trump rallies. But some of America 250's activities were going to be subsidized by Congress. And so in May of 2025, La Savita, Trump's former campaign director, urged the organization to ask Congress for $150 million, with the understanding that $100 million of that would fund America 250's actual programming and $50 million would go to the White House's own events through Task Force 250. O'Rourke would raise another $85 million for the White House's priorities. And they got it. Congress gave them the whole $150 million allocation and put the Interior Department in charge of handing out the money. But then the White House started turning those events into MAGA rallies, which A, ate up much more than $150 million, and B, pissed off the bipartisan board of America 250, who was never going to go along with that. And remember, that $150 million is controlled by Secretary Doug Burgum at the Department of the Interior. He can turn off the money spigot at will, and that is what he did. In October of 2025, Trump's advisor stood up Freedom250, a Delaware LLC whose registered agent, Harvard Business Services, is a go-to vendor for anonymous Trump-affiliated organizations. Freedom250 was not associated with America 250's congressionally chartered nonprofit. Instead, it operated through the National Park Foundation, the congressionally chartered philanthropic partner of the National Park Service, which is, of course, administered by the Interior Department and Secretary Doug Burgum. Freedom250 effectively took over all planning for events in D.C., while America 250 was told to focus elsewhere in the country. Freedom250 started hoovering up an increasing share of federal funding, scooping up donations, and absorbing long-planned events, often with Trump placed at the center of them. Congress's own memorandum of agreement had promised America 250 $50 million by February 1st, but only $25 million ever showed up. Meanwhile, between December and April, Interior transferred $68 million to the National Park Foundation for Freedom250. But here's the thing about routing this stuff through a charity. They don't have to disclose their donors. So by parking Freedom250 inside the National Park Foundation, they got to wrap themselves in the patriotic mantle of America's national parks and exempt themselves from the transparency Congress built into the actual 250th Commission, all while seizing funds allocated by Congress for America 250 and taking control of the programming. Now, I have a lot more I want to say about this, but let's just say my thoughts are not always advertiser friendly. But luckily, I have an outlet where I can speak freely without getting demonetized and even use some R-rated naughty words whenever I want. You can watch this exclusive content on Nebula, which sponsored this portion of the video. Nebula is a streaming service where you can watch tons of exclusive content from us and hundreds of your favorite creators ad-free and early. In fact, every video we make contains additional legal analysis and uncensored editorial that you can only watch on Nebula. We put a lot of thought into that exclusive content, so it's always nice to see it shouted out in the comments here on YouTube. And if you use our link or code, you can get 50% off our annual subscription. So that's a year's worth of the best content for only $30, or you can get 40% off a lifetime of Nebula. Pay once for $300 and never pay again. It really is the best deal of all. Either way, click or scan now to continue watching Legal Eagle on Nebula, or we will see you in court. The timing here is not subtle. On November 11, 2025, a week before Freedom250 had even formally begun operating, the National Park Service signed a cooperative agreement with the foundation designating Freedom250 as the primary public-private partner for the entire 250th commemoration, with direct liaison rights to NPS program officials. In April, America 250 surrendered its own trademark to the Betsy Ross flag to Freedom250. You may recognize the distinctive flag with 13 stars arranged in a circle. Freedom250 has adopted those stars for its own logo. Here's Congressman Jared Huffman summarizing the committee members' findings.
They call it Freedom250. On paper, it's a shell company registered in Delaware through the same anonymous vendor the president uses for his other businesses. But this LLC is different. It was lodged inside the National Park Foundation, the charity that's funded our national parks for 50 years. Think about why you'd do that. As part of a charity, the LLC could take in huge sums of money without ever naming who or where it came from. This arrangement lets them sell access to the president, collect checks from anyone willing to pay, and keep every donor's name secret, all under the banner of a trusted American institution, the National Parks Foundation. Then they starved America 250. Congress had set aside $150 million to celebrate our 250th. The America 250 Commission was promised $100 million of that funding. But in November of 2025, the White House told the America 250 chairwoman she would only get $50 million. And in the months that followed, they whittled it down to just $25 million. The rest of the money was taken by Freedom250. Between this and other redirected funds, hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars are now unaccounted for.
Meanwhile, Trump's personal business has been separately pursuing a trademark on Trump 250 with a logo that looks strikingly similar to America 250's own. Do you need a Trump 250 wine glass to hold your Trump wine? Well, lucky for you, it's only $18.75. Drink up, America. And that is not the only part of this plan that has directly enriched the president himself. Remember that UFC fight on the White House lawn for Trump's 80th birthday? Fighter bonuses were reportedly paid out in USD1, the Trump family's own dollar-peg stablecoin issued by World Liberty Financial, a crypto venture that sits in a trust run by the president's children. World Liberty served as the bonus pool's presenting partner. Ringside seats sold for up to $1.5 million apiece, which easily offset the $60 million UFC paid to sponsor the event, even if you set aside the fact that the event was essentially a 6-hour ad for the UFC set at the White House. And weeks after the fight was announced, Trump himself bought stock, between $15,000 and $150,000 of it, in UFC's parent company. And once Freedom250 became untethered from America 250, they were free to inject that kind of pay-to-play access peddling into all the semi-quincentennial celebrations. Organizers circulated a bespoke sponsorship brochure with packages starting at $500,000 and climbing past $10 million. In exchange, donors got tiered perks, escalating from VIP access to speaking roles at the 4th of July celebration, to private receptions, and a historic photo opportunity with the president himself. 7 of those sponsors hired the same lobbying firm to represent them, Ballard Partners, the country's highest-earning lobbying shop, founded by a longtime Trump supporter, Brian Ballard. The firm's alumni include Chief of Staff Susie Wiles and former AG Pam Bondi. And actually, funny enough, Trump put all 3 of those, Ballard, Wiles, and Bondi, on the board of the Kennedy Center, where they then voted to rename the place after Trump. Which is funny, but I mean, it's not funny, ha-ha. Sponsors include Chevron, ExxonMobil, John Deere, Lockheed Martin, Oracle, Palantir, and Scott's Miracle-Gro, all of which want something from the president in his official capacity. Larry Ellison of Oracle got the green light for his merger of Paramount with Skydance last year, and now he's trying to take over Warner Brothers, which owns CNN. John Deere was less lucky. It's been desperately fighting advocates of the right to repair its farm equipment, but Trump refused to budge on that one. In June, he signed an executive order reaffirming his administration's commitment not to prosecute farmers, although he called it freedom to fix, because I guess that sounds less communist or something. John Deere can join the MAHA movement in a bowl of sour grapes. For years, Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert Kennedy railed against the dangers of the pesticide glyphosate, better known as Roundup, which is sold by Scott's Miracle-Gro. In February, Trump put out another executive order declaring that glyphosate production is critical to the nation's food supply and ordering the Secretary of Agriculture to ensure an adequate pipeline of phosphorus for its production. The Trump administration also sided with Monsanto, Scott's production partner for Roundup, at the Supreme Court, alleging that the product causes cancer. Monsanto won that case, by the way, and Scott's won too, thanks to a big boost from Trump. By sheer coincidence, Scott sponsored not only the Great American State Fair through Freedom250, but also Trump's UFC fight, pledging $1 million to restore the lawn to its original state through a combination of monetary and product support by resodding and reseeding the South Lawn after it was destroyed for Trump's birthday brawl. As the House Democrats put it, the equation is simple. The president gets money for vanity projects, the companies get a private channel to seek favor, while contracts, grants, enforcement actions, or other federal matters are pending, and taxpayers are left with a government that operates less like a public trust and more like a pay-to-play scheme. After Freedom250 was set up, Trump's people immediately transferred their efforts to the programs that he and his allies controlled. Meredith O'Rourke, Trump's former chief fundraiser, became the engine of Freedom250 solicitations, including the sponsorship tiers that put that literal price tag on access to the president. Justin Caporale, Trump's former executive producer for events, ran the operation through Event Strategies, the same outfit that staged the rallies around January 6th. And Brad Parscale, Trump's longtime digital strategist, got handed the event registration platform, meaning every person who signs up for a nonpartisan 250 event has their data fed straight into Parscale's voter targeting operation for Trump's campaign and party. La Savita told The Atlantic that the move wasn't to wrest control of the events and turn them into celebrations of the president himself. It was that America 250 can't get over the fact that Trump won. They want to apologize for America's 250th. We don't. House Democrats tell a different story.
According to a whistleblower, not everyone who donated money to Freedom250 knew that's what they were doing. Fundraisers misled donors who intended to support the America 250 Commission by giving them Freedom250's banking information. And through this bait and switch, contributions meant for the nonpartisan Birthday Foundation were routed to Trump's shadow corporation instead. This is potential wire fraud.
If donors were actually deceived into sending money to Freedom250 when they intended to give it to America 250, that might well be wire fraud. And if Democrats take back the House in November and get subpoena power, you can bet they're going to be all over that one. In their report, they say that after Freedom250's launch, donors who had intended to support America 250 came under pressure to redirect their giving to Freedom250. Some donors pulled back existing commitments, and some who have donated have asked not to be announced, fearing reprisal from the Trump administration. According to sources, prospective donors and sponsors have been told by the Trump administration that they do not have a green light to donate to America 250. Freedom250 itself has conducted aggressive outreach to America 250's corporate sponsors, confusing donors who were not aware of the differences between America 250 and Freedom250. Danielle Alvarez, a Freedom250 spokeswoman, told the Washington Post that the report was nothing more than a partisan smear from politicians who would rather manufacture division than celebrate America's 250th birthday alongside the rest of the country. She also took a swipe at America 250 itself, saying the bipartisan commission had nothing to show for 10 years of planning and the American people deserve better. But it isn't just Democrats saying that Trump's people at Freedom 250 deliberately obscured the difference between the two projects. Multiple musical acts pulled out of the fair when it became clear that they'd been hoodwinked into signing on with Freedom 250 rather than the nonpartisan America 250. The headliners were announced on May 25th, but within days, almost every one of them had dropped out, saying they didn't realize they were signing up to perform at a de facto MAGA rally. Martina McBride said, "I was presented with an opportunity to perform at a nonpartisan event, but that turned out to be misleading. I've been blessed with an opportunity to be a voice for those who have felt like they didn't have one. It greatly upsets me that any fan who has been moved by my music may now feel like I'm abandoning the meaning behind those songs." Trump reassured the faithful that it would still be an epic show featuring the #1 attraction anywhere in the world, the man who gets much larger audiences than Elvis in his prime, and he does so without a guitar, the greatest president in history, the GOAT, Donald J. Trump, to take the place of these highly paid, third-rate artists and give a major speech, rallying the country forward like I have done ever since being president. And that worked out great. And so, fans on the Mall never got to hear Martina McBride sing Independence Day, a song about a victim of domestic violence, abandoned by her community, who finally breaks free and burns down the house on July 4th with herself and her abusive husband inside it. But you can bet they heard YMCA, which is definitely not a gay anthem, and Creedence Clearwater Revival's Fortunate Son, an anti-war song often played at Trump rallies because no one on his team understands song lyrics or irony. It ain't me, babe. But speaking of cultural illiteracy, we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge that the message being pushed by Freedom250 is explicitly one of Christian nationalism. Initially, America 250 received a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences to launch 6 mobile exhibits known as Freedom Trucks to travel across the country throughout 2026, sharing the story of our nation's founding. As with so much of America 250's support, that was seized by Freedom250 and turned into MAGA propaganda. The trucks feature content from PragerU and Hillsdale College. PragerU produces hilariously revisionist propaganda that seeks to whitewash American history, like this children's show called Leah and Layla's History Adventures, where Frederick Douglass appears to endorse the Three-Fifths Compromise.
The southern colonies were dependent on slave labor, and they wouldn't have joined a union that had banned it.
Are you okay with that?
I'm certainly not okay with slavery, but the Founding Fathers made a compromise to achieve something great.
Hillsdale College is a tiny Christian school in Michigan which situates itself as a counterweight to progressive education, recasting the Founding Fathers as fervent Christians and preaching the idea that separation of church and state is a myth made up by liberals. Unsurprisingly, this dynamic duo came up with content like an AI George Washington saying, "Our rights are a gift from God," a totally made-up quote. They quote Thomas Jefferson as saying that slavery is a cruel war against human nature itself, without mentioning that Jefferson owned hundreds of slaves and impregnated a teenage Sally Hemings, a child who could not give consent. And there's a word for that, which doesn't appear in any of the Freedom Trucks. These exhibits launder totally debunked claims about the Continental Congress authorizing the printing of a Bible for use in schools. They omit the reality that Native Americans were forcibly thrown off their lands, or that the U.S. acquired huge swaths of the country from Mexico and Spain by military conquest. They even claim that Muhammad Ali renounced Islam later in his life, which he did not. And also, why would you tell that particular lie? Ask yourself why the people pushing this version of America's history would need a great American like Muhammad Ali to be Christian. That's the kind of content that was on display at the Great American Mall Fair, too, along with bland palaver praising the Trump administration for its glorious feats of governance. That is what your tax dollars paid for, along with Rededicate 250, a national jubilee of prayer, praise, and thanksgiving, which took place in May. The event featured 18 Christian faith leaders, 1 Orthodox Jewish rabbi, and 0 Muslim, Hindu, or Buddhist clergy. Also, 1 in 5 Americans is atheist, and they weren't represented there either. But these events are not about celebrating all Americans. This is a story about real Americans that conveniently excludes more than half the people who live here. Trump and his minions at Freedom250 are selling a story of this country that excludes broad swaths of people and minimizes their very real contributions. These are festivals that glorify white Christians and put them at the center of our nation's story. And they're about one particular white Christian man who is celebrated over everyone else and who can demand tribute from companies with businesses before the government and use their donations to remake Washington in his own image and line his own pockets. And that is not a birthday present for this country. That's rewinding the clock 250 years and saying, you know what? We'd very much like to be governed by a mercurial monarch with absolute power. Nah, thanks, but no thanks.
Now, all this highlights why it's so important to get a great lawyer when you're dealing with your own case. Now, after I started this channel, every week I'd get hundreds of comments and emails from viewers who are dealing with legal problems. And they'd ask, can you help me find a lawyer? How do I know if this attorney is any good? And there's a massive gap in our justice system. It's that people don't know how to find the right lawyer for their specific situation. They're scared, they're overwhelmed, and they end up doing nothing or hiring the first attorney who calls them back. And that really bothered me. So I started to wonder, what if there was a different way? What if we could build a law firm that actually lived up to the values that I talk about on this channel? Transparency, accessibility, and putting clients first instead of chasing billable hours. A firm where you don't need to pay anything up front and your lawyers only get paid if you do, to maximize your opportunity for justice. So a few years ago, I decided to fix that problem. I decided to start my own personal injury law firm. And honestly, it wasn't an easy choice. But I realized I was in this unique position. I had this platform, this community, and the experience. Not to get rich, trust me, there are easier ways to make money than starting a law practice. But we did it because access to justice shouldn't be a luxury. Because finding the right legal representation shouldn't feel like playing Russian roulette with your future. And when you work with my firm, you're not just getting a lawyer. You're getting a team that understands that behind every case is a real person with real stakes. If we can't represent you or you're in a state where we don't practice, we'll take the time to try to match you with an attorney in my personal network of lawyers. A national network of some of the best lawyers in the country who actually specialize in what you're going through, located right where you are, not just whoever happens to be available. So if you're dealing with a personal injury, a car crash, a data breach, sexual harassment, a social security or workers' comp issue, give us a call at the number on screen or click on the link below. Now, I can't represent everyone that watches this channel. I wish I could, but what I can do is make sure that when you need legal help, you have somewhere to turn to that you can trust. So whether it's me handling your case or the incredible attorneys we partnered with, you'll get the same principles of honesty and education that we bring to every video. And if you're dealing with a legal issue and you're not sure where to start, check out the link in the description. Let's have a conversation about how we can help you find not just a lawyer, but the right lawyer for your situation. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, making sure that when life gets complicated, you don't have to face it alone. Which is why when you need a lawyer, you don't just need a legal team, you need the Eagle team.